So Golden,
Yeah.
we've been talking a bunch from our experiences as players about mechanics that, for the most part, the players interacted with.
Yeah. So
But
all of you
there's another side
guys,
to this.
yeah, all of you guys basically were new to this edition. I played it before. It was my goal to like give it my best. Um, no matter how much you guys say, you did a great job on this. To me, it's like, but I'll never be as good as Jenna. um, like,
Yeah. The thing about, I imagine, when it comes to the creator of a game GMing it is usually they create the game in a way that is natural for them to play anyways, and so
right.
it's probably literally easier for them to GM the game than it is for most other people because
It
it's their
might
natural
be,
process of thinking.
but like every time you guys took a wound, and I was like, how do I write the affliction to be cool? Or
You
uh,
got there, though.
yeah, I mean, I made many compromises, and we created an experience you guys enjoyed, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what's important. But like, also like, man, I can't imagine if I had a chat that was like as rules savvy as JP's.
I would want that just because more people would therefore have played this game.
Right?
However,
Right, totally.
I would not want that for you
It'd be like,
because for
but
a game like this that's based on individual interpretation, you would have 1,000 people saying 1,000 different things that you should do.
yeah, it would be
Mm-hmm.
truly chaos. But I feel like at the end of the day, I did it. This may not be your favorite game. You may never play it again, but I think you guys understand why Nobilis is amazing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so teaching the game. Again, I chose this edition because it's easier to teach. If you're interested in the art or the background and the world, second edition is like without a doubt better. I mean, even just for the margins, the stories and the margins are amazing. But for teaching the game, I decided like I would push you guys through the life path system and do a prelude before you were Nobilis, and then I'd introduce you to miraculous combat, and and after that, you guys just took off. So it
What
worked.
can I ask? What edition is this? Just so the viewers know, because we've been talking about second edition.
Yeah, this is the third
This
edition.
is 3.
Third edition. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The first edition is basically not an extant document.
Okay. You can't find it.
It may not even be a role playing game so much as a thesis on role playing games.
Some
Mhm.
proof of concept.
Yeah, I've heard it's like it's just really a beautiful
Esoteric?
book, but yeah, really esoteric, and the rules are even more high concept.
Mm-hmm. And then second edition is the one that to any extent popularized Nobilis. It's often called the Great White Book, and it's a beautiful, like, it is a coffee table book. Like, you could have it out on
Very
your
cool.
desk, and it's just, the art is amazing. It's the marginalia, like Will was saying, is fantastic, and that for me is a big part of the joy of playing the game. Is like manifesting that kind of fairy tale storytelling in play, which is super, super fun. And I thought, Will, you did really well in some of the contradictions and the characters that showed up.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, right, this game is about creativity, and I like to think I'm a creative person, but like just having to do it over and over again is kind of
Mhm.
crazy, and that's why I'm so happy about the things in this game that make it possible. Like the mortal actions lists makes it possible for me to like determine how badly a character wants something, what they are willing to pay. Because if I'm a dumbass GM and I see that this character has 10 MP because I just created him, then a dumbass GM would just have them do a word of command at max power and wreck the players every time, right?
Mhm.
Like, but that's not interesting experience. Like, and also Like, that's not fair. So
Yeah.
the fact that it gives me, ways to chart, what the characters really want and what they're
Mm-hmm.
willing to pay to get it is immensely important to being able to run this game.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's cool. I hadn't. That's interesting. So you're saying you used like passions and bonds and afflictions as a GM tool quite a bit.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
As
Like,
signposts.
and also like estate estate principles. We didn't really get to see that, but like chart day up the systems stuff. Let me see if I can open my Word document.
Yeah, pull it up. That's cool. Is there? This is a question that I have. Is there a way to discover estate properties?
Yeah, you just do a divination.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's never explicitly said, but
Right.
I'm pretty sure that's how you do it. So yeah, like I did Power of Sales, the philosophy of Tarte up the Pishdom. I think I actually told you. It fills one with clarity, demonstrates the unreality of creation, is free from the veil of lies, and cannot be denied.
Very cool.
Xana Sanguine's afflictions were my spells are always complicated. I can't be interrupted while casting spells. I must curse those who wrong me, and I am always in the border mythic. So that's why, like, she was constantly whispering and casting magic. You guys just thought she was being creepy, but she was deliberately doing this to gain the auctoritas to protect herself from your miracles.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
And stuff like that. Her skills, well, she has a skill 5 of witchcraft, and then shine of 4, cool 4, passion of 2 for technology, and a passion of 3 for tradition.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, all these things, like the fact that I could just define a character in like this much text, has really helped a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Yeah, and like it's just also like the different grades of abilities. Like, let me make more complicated challenges for you guys, right? Like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
here's a challenge you can just solve by spending MP.
Yeah,
Here's
that's
a
true.
challenge where you actually have to understand what auctoritas is.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a challenge with the balanced action economy so that you can defeat a foe who has as much resources to spend as you do.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a challenge where you're completely outclassed and outnumbered, but you can still get what you want if you take advantage of the openings when the other character acts to get what they want.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that was really good. And like, it's much better than like D&D, where like, oh, we're just going to make you grind a little bit. It really is like, as a GM, I can see when you guys
Mm-hmm.
have internalized a lesson and are ready for next challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Next part was story resolution versus player influence. So there's this thing in role playing games where some people don't like the word story, and to me, like, this word story really just means that there's a coherent situation that the characters can internalize and then act on.
Yeah.
So keeping the game coherent and having consequences come from that versus you guys acting to change the situation, to change the world, is actually like pretty difficult, because
Mm-hmm.
not only is it like a skill thing where I have to come up with challenges for you guys, but I also need to be able to, sit on the spot and throw new challenges at you guys based on your actions. Like, I can't wait till next session to give you the consequences for your action, to
Yeah.
resolve your action. Like, your actions resolve immediately.
Exactly.
So
That makes
this
sense.
was something that, like, for me at least, it was like really hard to just balance this and get it right.
Mhm.
And I'm sure that another GM would do it differently. But like this is something where you
Yeah.
just have to be like, well, do your best. And finally, I just like the investment of myself into this game. So the funny thing is, it doesn't take much time. I did maybe an hour of prep a week, and it mostly was writing up estate properties and afflictions and bonds for characters.
Mhm.
I did come up pretty early on with like an idea of like what the NPCs wanted,
Mm-hmm.
and that helped a lot. But really, it was just like it still took a lot of energy because like it just takes a lot of nerve to run this game.
Mhm.
Yeah, it
How
takes a
does it
lot
com-
of
Mhm.
constant thinking.
Yeah.
Do you find it took like more energy or more of yourself relative to other games, even games that are as rule complex, like Burning Wheel?
Oh, definitely. So like here's the thing, right? Like most games, they'll exhaust me while I'm playing them.
Mhm.
Nobilis exhausts me when I'm not doing anything else. Like as a
Hmm.
as a player or GM, the thing that I do is like it's not I'm not just playing the game when I'm here at the table. I'm playing the
Mhm.
game all week. I'm like, oh, that was such an awesome scene. I could do these other follow-ups. Like, what if this had gone differently? Right? Like, it's like
Mhm.
reading a book, and my
Yeah,
mind is just constantly producing new storylines that I can experience.
that
Um,
seems like the best part of GMing. Kind of in a way, is getting to think about the game, but also for a game like this, because the possibilities are so vast,
yeah,
Mhm.
it's that mix of enjoyable and exhausting.
yeah. I mean, like my brain is still generating all these ideas, but then it becomes subconscious, and so I don't get to enjoy it,
Right.
and it's still draining my energy. So
Right.
it's just
Yeah.
Do
really
you
I
think
don't
it's
know how else to
like
explain it.
yeah. I wonder if the game like it would do you think the book would benefit from a section on like here's how to hollyhock god the game or like here's how to prep for a session? Because there's I don't is there anything for the hollyhock god in the book?
I don't think so.
Like
No,
there's
not
nothing,
really.
right? And
Basically,
it's such a weird game.
the
Yeah.
Hollyhock's
Do you have?
job is to tell your players stuff, just to talk at you guys,
Right.
tell you guys a narrative, like weave a story, kind
Yeah.
of like Polaris in that way, and then the players will interrupt you. That's the
Yeah.
only advice in the entire book.
That's very like for a game like this. Do you feel that it would benefit from a very specific GM style? Not like in terms of you should interpret things in this way, but just in terms of like more like how to be a general good GM and how I imagine it would seem to me that many of the skills that are just part of good being a good GM are even more vital in a game like this that's so like dependent upon negotiation. Like the idea of the GM says is not a thing here.
It's hard for me to say because, like, this is not a game that sprung up from a void. I was part of the community that surrounded the author while she wrote it.
Mhm.
Okay.
So, I absorbed a lot of stuff that's not in the book. A lot of the philosophy of the game. I
Mhm.
read, like, she has a weblog where she just writes stories. I
Mhm.
absorb the style, artistic style that she writes in, the logical style that you know, the myth that underpins all her stories, and I
Mhm.
pattern my GMing after that because I'm trying to play her game. I
Mhm.
imagine this is how she would
Yeah.
run Nobilis. What it would be like.
I
I
That
don't
makes
know
sense. I try to do the
how
same thing.
to boil that down to good advice.
Mhm. It is. Sorry, Primark, you were going to say something, and then
I was just saying, I run Dungeon World semi-frequently, more in the past than I do now, just because I'm more busy now. But that's the same thing when it comes to like when I watched Adam play Dungeon World and GM it for the first time. That's when it really clicked for me in terms of like all of the stuff in the book really clicked when I saw it in action by the writer, even having already followed him.
Yeah.
So
Adam is really like adamant about putting GM style into rules, right? And yet,
exactly.
Like, I mean, I feel like you don't have to run it like Jenna wants. You don't have to run it in her spirit. But I will. I always will.
Yeah, like we were talking on Twitter a while back about like what is game design, right? And one of the things that we were debating is like is the design of a book, is the design of the text overall a form of game design? And I would say that like for Nobilis, probably more so than any other game, like the marginalia tell you what the game is about.
Right.
The marginalia is the game is about those fairy tale moments, those things that are true even if they're not correct. Right? Like getting to those kinds of moments is what the game is for. And so like reading, for me anyway, and I love the marginalia, and the marginalia are a big part of like what draw me to the game.
Right.
But like a game that doesn't, even though there's no rule in the book that says like, hey, make these kinds of moments happen. If you don't have those kinds of moments happen, you're like not really playing Nobilis. You're using the rules of Nobilis to play some other game.
Yeah.
And so like and that's like one of the strengths of the Great White Book is that the second edition, I think more so than this edition.
Oh, definitely.
Like
this edition is like anime cat girls,
right?
Riding
and the Great White Book is like it's like a holy book, right? Like
pretty much.
And so when you read it, you're like, oh, this is a holy text. You're supposed to play this entire game with both like reverence and irreverence at the same time, and it's the intersection between those two things that makes these great moments.
Okay.
And this one, it's harder to get that because I think it's there in the text, but the framing of it in terms of art and I think
it's
rules
much more
complexity. I think it's mechanically complex. Yeah.
And the mechanics almost blot out the story sometimes. Like, not even the story. I don't know what it's like, an artistic style. Like, the mechanics aren't perfectly in line with the style, is what I would say. But I don't know. Like, it's not like, what's the word? Like, it's not like the mechanics don't produce the style, but that you can become distracted in just following the process and not think about what that process is producing.
So the mechanics don't necessarily enforce the style.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
But also like adding mechanics that would just be like tacked on, I feel.
Yeah.
It would probably feel a lot more limiting, actually, because one of the things that I pulled from this game is that everything is within bounds and free form.
Yeah.
You know? So when you start trying to shove people into a specific thing, it's just going to take away those options.
Yeah.
I think,
if you want to play the cat girl power of surfing, I mean, okay.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Hell
yeah. Totally. Well, like, so, and this is a good transition because we're about to talk about like unused mechanics, but there's some mechanics that were stripped out of 2E that like show you a very different design philosophy in this game. So in the second edition, like one of the things you get is code, and a code is literally like we all chose to align ourselves with heaven or hell. I forget which one.
We all went with hell. But like in second edition, it gives you 3 things that if you follow the code of hell, you always do or never do, or like something like that, right? So it would be like, and it's like very prescriptive.
which in a way is like prescriptivism is kind of like anti-nobilis in a way, but also gave you much clearer guidance around like, oh, this is how I'm supposed to play the game.
Exactly.
Right. And in this, she's kind of just taken it all out.
So code sort of gave you a player's etiquette, I guess you would say, like.
Yeah, it was like a character etiquette. So let me see if I can find an example of like the code.
There weren't bonds and afflictions in 2E, right?
There were.
Also, these were those or something else?
They were different.
Okay.
I don't know. We can talk about this after. I need to look up. I need to go and reread the second edition.
Yeah, I have mine somewhere.
Yeah.
But I only just read it for the margins nowadays.
Yeah. Okay. So the Code of Heaven. Beauty is the highest principle. Justice is a form of beauty. Lesser beings should respect their betters. And literally, if you were like, there was a space on your character sheet where you would write down your code, and these are things that like your character always had to do, or if they didn't do them, there would be consequences. And so it tells you like that in some ways gives the GM some more signals about like what to challenge, but it also kind of forced you to choose a way to play the game. You could write your own too, which was fine.
Okay, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, I might be interested in trying 2E. Yeah, it would be good.
Yeah, I think you guys definitely took to the game. I think you guys could do it.
Yeah. So,
should we move on?
Are we on unused mechanics now?
Well, we had Fat vs. Meat. I don't know what that's about.
We were talking about like what parts of the game are core to it and what parts aren't. I think we touched on Fat versus Meat pretty much every time we talked about any mechanic. Whether we basically said whether it was fat versus whether it was meat.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I think that is okay. Were there? I'm not super familiar. We brushed on a couple mechanics that were unused. What mechanics of the game were in the book that we never touched upon? Like we talked about how projects were supposed to work that we didn't use really. A couple other things like that.
Yeah. So
what else was there?
There's these additional powers your characters have. Like, they're mostly intended to be used for prolonged fights or against multiple opponents to give you guys a chance. We didn't really use those. I think I hinted at one point that we should during the climatic scenes, but it actually worked out pretty well without them.
Okay.
But basically, it's like a force multiplier. Like, you activate your Divine Mantle, and then for the next 4 hours, every action has edge. So, like, you might spend 4 MP on this, and then every action you take just cuts through every Auctoritas.
Okay.
Whereas the other one, the Auctoritas Magister, is the opposite. Every action you take for the next scene has 4 Auctoritas.
Okay.
And
interesting.
Very powerful.
We also didn't use Cool or Shine that much as well.
Yeah, that's true. So Cool and Shine are
which are kind of like mundane versions of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had them on my character sheet, but I never even added them until much later. And they never came up, I don't believe. Yeah.
There's just like a pile of minor powers that characters are allowed to do. Like Geising, powers can adapt themselves to crazy hostile environments. They turn into fishes when they fall into the sea. They become weird space power when floating in weird space chancels. They blur, distort, stretch, and become vast when visiting people's dreams. They can hang out among bird people and chow down casually on bird people food, even when it's wiggling.
Okay. So shapeshifting is a fairly... shapeshifting and when necessary is a normal thing.
Shapeshifting to match your environment is a normal thing. Shapeshifting is as a disguise you want.
Yeah,
is
that's what
not.
I meant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I also mentioned that you can actually speak any language, and some of these like have options the GM can customize. Like where I said, you can trade 3 MP from one group to another. Like if you want to spend 3 of your aspect MP to cast as 1 for a domain miracle, there's options to let the GM change that ratio.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so lots of stuff that's in here. Do you know?
Did we talk about the rights yet?
Oh, like the Nettle right?
Yeah, because we used that a little bit, but there were a bunch of other rights as well.
Where are they? I'm pretty sure they got cut for this edition.
Actually, that's a good question. Did they get the simple rights? Here we go, page 337.
I think they got cut.
The servant's right. That's the one where you make an anchor hiding in the flowers. Nobilis can mess up divinations on them by using flowers, tarot cards, or other symbols. Right of the last trump. That's the one where you were just talking about that, where you shift, where you use 3 MP to gain 1 in a different way. We didn't really use the gift of tongues. You talked about guising. Tracing a miracle we used a little bit, or mystic links, which is kind of the same thing. And then the nettle right, yeah.
But like, there's no flower right anymore.
Right. Yeah.
I'm sure there's other rights that are gone.
Yeah.
So in 2nd edition, the way you killed other powers was called the flower right. And man, how were flowers involved? I only remember the murder. But you had to kill like 100 people, like one person every day. And then you would use a certain kind of flower. I don't remember how it worked.
Yeah, there's a lot in here like that's been cut about like the language of flowers and all that kind of stuff.
The whole language of flowers is gone.
Yeah. Anyway,
lots
we're
of extra
going to
stuff.
name rules that don't exist and didn't come up in play for the next. Will and I are just going to do this for the next 30 minutes. Welcome to the stream.
Yeah.
So the next thing, we're almost done. So the next thing is the rulebook itself: coherence, organization, explanation, style, and how is it as a teacher of the game alone? And we've mentioned this before, and I think that alone as a teacher of the game, I don't know if any book would be enough alone to teach Nobilis. Honestly, like it's not that it seems like an impossible task.
Yeah, like I think the 2nd edition rulebook did it better, but like I don't know how much time it would take to digest the book and get to what I've done.
Yeah, like there's just so much.
Would it be a month? I mean, it took me 8 months to read 2nd edition. Would it be 2 months? And if they'd never played Nobilis before, what would it be like? Like, they just found this weird rulebook. It'd be like picking up the Vanek manuscript and being like, these pictures
I think that's
really
some flowers
weird.
in there. I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, a thing that 2nd edition does better is it has an extended like actual play text, which is there as a teacher of how to use the rules in play.
That's true.
And I get for this edition why like Jenna took it out, because she's very clearly trying to say like, hey, there isn't a right way to play this game. A lot of the game is making up rules and making up new stuff. But it's so different from a lot of other RPG experiences that I sometimes wonder if it would still be helpful to have something like that.
Yeah.
From my experience coming in cold and just reading through the book, stylistically, yes, it conveys what the game is in a sense, but as a manual of play, I'm not that thrilled with it.
I agree. I think it is good in explaining a world. I think in terms of formatting, in terms of like where everything is in the book, in terms of the order of presentation, could use, in my opinion, some vast improvements.
Yeah.
The mechanics are all over the place. The world is kind of like it's all jumbled together and not necessarily well. I think that the format of the book could use some major. It would be really easy to understand, I feel, if that was the case.
Mhm.
I think that even like the quote unquote the short, easy, like quick character creation and like summaries of that were still kind of not as concise as they could be.
Mhm.
I feel there's definitely improvement to be made in that way. Style, honestly, as much as the like, sure, I only know this art style, and I've kind of fallen in love with it. I don't know the older Nobilis' art style, and this art style is low budget, but it also has its own amazing charm. I feel.
Mhm.
Yeah, the watercolors especially.
Yeah, and so
And there's
really like
enough, and there's enough differing styles between all of the art that it evokes the fact that different parts of Nobilis in play are going to seem different. You know,
exactly.
it's not just one tone.
Right. And it is supposed to be like that, right? Like it's supposed to be quirky and whimsical, and it's the clash and contradictions that come out of the play that make for such an interesting and weird game.
Yeah, like,
exactly.
You can literally be a fictional character. Like there's an
Right.
entire fictional world in Nobilis, the land of fiction. And it's like anything that was ever written or imagined or dreamt is real in this game, or can be real in this game.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
you could just as easily play Roger Rabbit.
You could literally play Roger Rabbit.
You could literally play Roger Rabbit.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. One of the things that's like even just the sequence of things in the book is a little weird, right? Like it goes through like an introduction, which is a basic summary, but then it goes to imperators before it goes to the world, which is weird. And then it talks about other places that aren't the world. And then it goes to let's play a game, which is like some basic rules. And then it goes to friends and enemies. And then it goes to actions, which is like more rules.
Yeah,
right? It's weird. It's super all over the place, which is just a little. Again, being critical because we're here to discuss the pros and cons of the game, and I hope this is helpful. But like, I think reading it through, like, not reading the book through in sequence is fine.
Yeah,
but let's bring up the most important of that layout is that if you're in play trying to look up a rule, you're a little screwed.
Oh, totally. Well, and playing with a non-physical copy is super helpful, right?
It is because just control
you can just Google stuff.
Yeah, but if you had a physical copy, I imagine it would have a number of multicolored tabs sticking out the right-hand side.
Exactly.
Because
like it's actually kind of worse because a lot of these things are like hidden at the end of chapters. So it's like you don't even have like markers in the page layout to find things.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, no, totally. It's a strangely designed book. I think that the game is great, but the text and the character sheet in particular they're just not super accessible or super helpful for play. One of the things I really do like that she does in this is like there's a bunch of stuff that is clearly well defined, but there's also a ton of blanks. Like she gives you a lot of starting material, but then she'll like there's an entire section on like imperators, and one of the imperators is like, hang on, let me read the full text about this imperator. Here we are. This is like one of the four like most important imperators in the game, and all it says is Hakadosh Baraka treats the world as his playground.
Mm-hmm.
It's great. It's so good. And she does that like over and over again. Like she'll like talk about a faction and she'll like tell you a bunch of stuff about one faction, and then some other faction she'll just be like, this thing exists. People are scared of them, and then move on.
Yeah, exactly. It's just good luck with that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it makes it so that you can have that shared language between groups. Like we know that these things exist, but they exist in different ways for different groups.
Totally. Mm-hmm. Did you find that helpful as a GM, Golden, or did you find how did you engage with that kind of stuff?
What exactly? Like the blank spots?
Yeah, she does like short definitions of a lot of things, but she doesn't really provide long definitions of anything. So like the game text is very wide, but it's not super deep in terms of the world that it builds.
Yeah.
How do I say? Like, I find it super useful when she gave like lists of estate properties, or at least list of estates for all the NPCs. Because giving me a name actually is not anything. Like, I can go to sanskritnamegenerator.com and get a name and then cross-reference that with some other mythology, and then I have a pretty good idea for what an imperator could be. But like,
Yeah.
I found like the list of excrucians super helpful because it gave me, a couple of their miraculous attributes. But I would have liked, at least one estate property or affliction or something.
Mm.
Like, so yeah, I guess as a player, finding a space for a blank isn't useful for me, just because of I'm so good at coming up with blanks. What I need is things to fill them.
Right.
Okay. That makes sense.
I need a monster manual.
Okay.
I may make my own monsters, but there are times
but you need
when
a format.
if I want to use a character, like if I want to use Spock, I want to use Spock. I don't want to use my Spock. I want to use that Spock.
I see. Okay.
If I want my own Spock, I'm not going to call him Spock.
Interesting. I am not like that at all, but that's cool.
Right, like you would rather just have the stuff and then make your own versions.
Right.
I like making my own monsters and stuff like that. At least maybe it's just because most of my stuff with pre-made monsters is D&D 5e, and so it's all kind of old hat to me, and I'm frankly bored of many of the 5e monsters. That's probably why for me. It's like that.
Sure. But like, I had an idea in my head, and now it's gone.
That's fine. Yeah. Are we good for this section then?
Yeah.
I think so. Okay. So, yeah, the next chapter is Thoughts on the Nobilis 101 video. We've talked about this off stream a couple times, I think, about like how useful would a This is Nobilis introductory video, taking the things that we like, just taking like it'd probably be around half an hour. It might even be a full hour to talk about like This is Nobilis in terms of what it is, easier to understand, kind of just like a seminar, basically, a tutorial video on how to play Nobilis and what all of the many, many terms are. And all of the like what actual play can look like and what the game is about. And a bunch of the stuff that we've mentioned here and some things that we haven't mentioned here because we're reviewing the game, not teaching it, summarized up. Do you guys still think that something like that can be done well and would be useful and there would be space for that?
Yeah, but it had to be really heavily scripted. I think the fact that it's taken 4 hours for this video should be a warning to anyone trying to just explain the mechanics of the game.
Yeah, like there's a reason it took us 3 to 4 sessions to even start, me and Zen to even really start to learn Nobilis, and there's still rules we didn't even use.
The thing is that I think I could give a really tight explanation of the mechanics, but it wouldn't have the emotional context you need. Like
that makes sense.
I could tell you what an imperator was in under a minute,
It's just
But would you
doesn't matter without context.
know what an Imperator was when you saw it? Like you might have
Yeah.
this abstract idea of what it was,
Hmm.
but I only have a minute.
Yeah. I guess that makes sense. You could have to do things like give extremely like you have to give examples, and those examples would have to be effectively perfect examples.
You'd have to use some really
Yeah.
rich language.
Well,
Yes.
here's the thing. We talked about it when we were talking about the rule book. Like, Nobilis is something I think you actually need to experience in order to understand, rather than
Yeah.
read
This
it
is
from
a
page
role-playing
or
game.
have someone talk to you about it.
But like, I think
Like-
this came up was because Primarch was saying, somebody watched the video and they didn't understand what was going on.
And I was wondering if, like, is there something that we could link to? Be like, okay, you don't understand this role-playing game, even with as someone who's played other role-playing games. Is there something we can help with about that?
Yeah, I mean, we
and
could give
there's
them the
not.
terminology.
But that would even telling, like, I've tried to explain Nobilis to my girlfriend relatively successfully, and I've been like, okay, here are some of the terms. Like, here is what an Imperator and a Noble and a Chancel is and stuff like that. And those are just the bare bones terms.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you could get away with explaining broad strokes.
Yeah, and I
That's
think
about it.
maybe
yeah.
that's okay. I don't think this is like a replacement for the rule book. I would, if I was ever to make a video like this, and I'm not in the position to, I don't know the game well enough to, et cetera, but I would suggest if a video like that is ever made, that it's not made instead of the rulebook, but it's made to get people more interested in the rulebook.
Yeah.
Right. In the same way that there are like 30-page documents explaining how to play Dungeon World.
Yeah. And and that was honestly really useful. Like the Dungeon guide was like, oh, here are those rules. Here's what it actually looks like, and here is what this part of the rule looks like is a written example, and the thought process behind the GM. And I really liked Adam Kobel's like Why I Love Burning Wheel 1 hour long video. It didn't explain the rules. It barely touched the rules. It was more talking about what it feels like to play, and I think it worked. Like what he said is true about how Burning Wheel, which itself is, I think, also a game in a very different way that you need to experience to really get. So I think it's possible to make a video without the intention of like, here is all of it. It's more like, here is a trailer of it. Here is why it's awesome. Here is these things when you play the game, pay attention to them. And these are the esoteric parts, and I'm going to make them easy, and then there's nothing esoteric in the game, and it's just easier to play.
I definitely think we could do it. I just think it has to be really heavily scripted. Like we would
very
have
much
to
so.
choose our words. We have to use flowery language.
I'm not even talking about us. I think this would be like probably a one-person talking type of video.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, this is.
I mean,
and you'd have to use art well, I think. Like,
oh, very much so. Art would be in there. The introduction would probably be something like actually talking about, like, do you remember your favorite fairy tales and stuff like that. Like, just start with something that the average viewer might be familiar with, which I don't think would start as a role-playing game. I think it would start as like an actual fairy tale story. And then say, here's how that would work in Nobilis in terms of like, yeah.
It would be... stuff is so weird. I can't think of any fairy tales with this shit in there.
Yeah. Okay, so here's a question that's not on the sheet, but is probably an interesting question. Is Nobilis a streamable game?
I mean,
these are some of the best videos on my channel.
But is that due to the niche audience who already understands it?
I mean,
like,
is it? I mean, I feel like I don't understand Nobilis, and I've played it like.
I'm not saying it performs any better. I'm just saying I'm really happy with this presentation of what Nobilis is. Like,
okay,
now, well, I have to interrogate your question a little. Define streamable.
True.
Do you mean, is it an entertaining game to watch, or
Yeah, no, I think I'm posing the question, like, is it so like a PBTA game, right? Every time you invoke a rule, like it very clearly says when you do X, blah, these things happen. And so like if you listen to a lot of actual plays of PBTA games, a lot of the time people like they'll be like, I do this thing, and then they read the rule and then they choose the thing, right? And that makes it very easy to follow the rules when they are invoked in a Powered by the Apocalypse game. And something like D&D, the actions are just so fundamentally like simple. It's like I hit him with my sword, I roll a bullet, right? Like, and so so like they're very very concrete. And I almost wonder if Nobilis is difficult to stream. For some, I don't have a good definition of this, but I wonder if it's a difficult game to stream,
especially by those parameters. I don't think so.
Right.
I mean, very often I read to you guys the rules in question because I was teaching the game. I don't feel like that would get boring with time.
I agree. I also think that Nobilis has a different type of entertainment value. Because Nobilis is a game about language and interpretation, the chat and the players watching would probably jump into the chat log at any moment to say, but like, here's some ideas that you can do with your estate. Here's like, because you can do anything, you can suggest anything.
I mean,
yeah, it would probably be the most chaotic chat with a large viewership that I've ever seen.
And I think honestly, that could be embraced.
I feel like the chat would be too busy arguing with each other. They wouldn't have time to argue with the streamer.
Right.
Here's something that would be interesting and that could be done individually with buy-in from the players is getting chat to define estate properties. That would be fun.
For NPCs, yeah.
Yeah,
like
it would just.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, right? Your character in Nobilis, it's not some dude you're playing. It's an avatar for you as a player.
Yes.
So the estate properties should mean something to the player.
I agree, and I think that's why it would be of the player intentionally doing that. You could have a player that's effectively the avatar of chat. You could play the power of Twitch chat.
You could.
Oh God, I don't want to play with that.
We'll just put in like one of those macros, all right, and then they type in domain 9 of what state of Kappa? Okay, domain 9 of Kappa. Let me press stop stream button really quick.
I mean, just the estate property of salty as hell. Like,
right.
Yes. Oh my goodness, this is.
But I feel like it's super streamable. Like, also, you guys don't see this, but most of the time I had the rules open in the stream. So,
okay.
And I feel like it's high enough resolution they could read them.
I didn't know that.
So if someone was really interested, they could pause the VOD, read the bits themselves, see what some of the other options I was considering was.
Is it on the live stream or on the VOD that it's performing most well, or is it both?
I don't really think it's performing well at all, to be honest. Let me see here.
Oh, I thought you were very happy.
It was at the start. But because we had so many breaks, we lost a lot of our audience. And that's kind of the thing with Twitch, is you got to be consistent.
Yeah, consistency is necessary, especially just starting up. You need to be like ironclad consistent, and we can't. And
So
okay,
look over here.
We are kind of getting off on a tangent about.
We are about streaming.
Sorry,
are we ready for conclusive thoughts?
Yeah.
Okay. Who wants to start?
I'm looking at my Twitch stats right now.
I think. Do we all have an idea of what the game sets out to do? Like what the intention of Nobilis is?
I think so. We mentioned this a couple of times now.
So it's a game that allows you to, I mean, embody all of those fantastic tales that we all grew up with. Like,
effectively, yeah. But it's simultaneously a game that allows you to explore alternate worlds where the definition of a concept or something is missing or changed. Yeah, it does a couple different things, and it does all of them well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I started by saying that like the game is about language, and I think the game sets out to get you to argue about what things mean.
Yes, and I like
it's
that.
very, very good at that. And this edition, I think, is because of the introduction of estate properties. I think this game is arguably better at that than previous editions were. And I really like this because it forces you to get concrete about it.
Mhm.
Yeah, so for what we imagine is the purpose of the game, it's very good at what it does, in my opinion.
Very.
If you follow the rules and the structure of the game, I don't think it's possible to not do that. So
It's kind of built in. Okay. So next question: is the game good at what it sets out to do? We just discussed that. Would we play it again? My answer: absolutely. After a bit of a break, because my brain hurts a bit. But yes.
Yes,
I mean-
I need a break.
yeah, I'd definitely come back to this game armed with a little bit of experience and able to come in and tweak the character to more of knowing well now, I would be able to make a much better character and story, in my opinion.
Same here.
I'd love to play it again. I played this game a bunch. I love it. It's great. I'm really interested now, having played this edition, to go back to second edition and play that and see how it compares. I think that would be really interesting because it's been like 10 years since I played second edition, probably.
I wanted to ask how much did you play when you did play it? Like how long and how many games or how many
it's a good question.
session?
I played in one campaign. I hollyhock-godded another campaign, and then I played a throwaway game that was like 2 or 3 sessions.
Okay. So two full campaigns and then our mini campaign and a session or 2.
Yeah. It was good. I think it was really interesting to play with you, Golden, because you it's just interesting to see other people HG the game because it's so open to interpretation. And you it was fun to see that. And to see you explore stuff that I've explored but in take it in completely different narrative directions, which is really fun. The richness of the world, and the world is very consistent between this game and the previous one. That's a thing that hasn't changed. That makes for interesting experiences as well. I'd love to do 2E again, and then I would also play it again. I'd be really interested in doing a slice of life game, like the one where we meet the power of birds and argue about arguing about stuff, because we
Has
went
that
there.
ever happened in your previous games?
Yeah. So I actually had Terte Napishtim in a game that I GM'd.
Oh, very cool.
As the main, not even as a threat, but literally in the hey, you're going to argue with this person about whether creation is worth saving.
The main anti-philosopher.
Right, totally.
Very cool.
And so it was interesting to see that go in a different, and to have them be so aggressively they get into creation and then they destroy it. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's just it's interesting. It's super fun to revisit. There's a lot of thematic depth. There's a lot of openness in how you interpret the world and how you play it. And I think going into if we were running a longer campaign and we're able to do more of the political intrigue kind of stuff, that would be super interesting too.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Like I've said, I just want to play the Excrucians, man. The Excrucians are the good guys.
Right.
Yeah,
Isn't that Chubos? Let's play Chubos.
is that? That's awesome.
I don't
Yeah.
think quite.
Not literally, but
No, so Chubos is like it's a game by Jenna, and it's kind of set in creation after the Excrucians have destroyed it.
oh, cool. So do all of her games take place kind of like that, like on their own thing?
No.
Not really.
Okay, just that one.
Yeah, and it's not like really explicit. It's just I think I could be wrong, but it's not super explicit. It's just like
Could be
It's like the
Yeah.
origin of the idea.
headcanon.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right.
Who would we recommend it to? That's our last question.
Anybody.
I wouldn't say anybody. I would not recommend this game to Beer and Pretzels D&D players.
I'd
Yeah,
make them play.
Strap them down.
No, but I think this game would appeal most to, honestly, writers, like people that appreciate the written word and the meanings behind them.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So
That's
if
interesting.
you're
That makes sense.
if you're someone that likes to play with people's opinions and their perspectives and how things are supposed to work versus how you want them to work, this is definitely your game.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I also wouldn't necessarily recommend this game to people who are really who don't like arguing in a very specific way. In terms of like, if you find yourself, if when you discuss interpretation.
Oh no.
Oh, I think we lost Primark. Uh-oh. But to extend his point, yeah, like I agree. Like this game is built for debate club. Like people who were in debate club in high school. Right? Like Golden, I think you and I were talking about this before. Like I'm a big believer that like this game is built for rules lawyers, but it has to be a very particular kind of rules lawyer. Like you don't necessarily need to enjoy winning the argument. You just need to enjoy the argument.
It could be. I like arguing.
Yeah.
It's really hard for me to like see it from that direction. Like it fits really close to what I like. It's just a little bit pretentious.
It's definitely very, very pretentious.
Too much. Hold on. Like, I almost feel dirty for liking this game sometimes. It's like, do I really want to? Like, do I really feel like it's that important? Like, do I care about angels and heaven and hell? And do I care if what love is, so long as people love? Does it really matter?
Right.
And maybe that's why I like the Excrucians so much.
You're just like tear it all down.
Tear it all down. We still have it. We just can't define it.
Yeah.
You know?
Totally.
Maybe that's it.
Yeah. This I find this version less pretentious in its like anime chibiness. It's like, hey, this is a fun thing to do.
It totally knocks down the pretentious level a little bit.
Again, the Great White Book is
ostentatious.
Yeah, it is called the Great White Book. Again, like it is written as a holy text. Like it's super ostentatious.
Yeah.
It's not. It's pretentious. That's a better word.
So let me ask you this: is this a game or is it a freeform RPG?
I mean, it has mechanics and resolution, so there is game to play, but I think the theme and style of the game sort of pull away from mechanical resolution anyway, because it's more about just pushing your own agendas and getting people to agree with how you see things. And it sort of feels like, yeah, I'm going to use a miracle to do that, but that's not the focus of what I want to do. The miracle is sort of it's lost in the definitions.
Yeah, I love it.
I've played it with people who like haven't played other RPGs, and it's been fine as well. Again, not this edition. I find this edition a little bit more rules complex than 2E. But if we're talking about who would we recommend it to, I definitely wouldn't say it's only for experienced RPG players. I think Zen, what you were saying about it, like it's more important that you know be a writer or have a writer's attitude or like enjoy narrative for the sake of narrative or arguing for the sake of arguing. Like those, I think they're personality characteristics rather than like RPG experience. I actually think that like similar to Dungeon World, like if you grew up playing D&D, Nobilis is a tough game to transition to.
Yeah.
It's maybe easier to transition to than Dungeon World in the sense that Dungeon World is like intentionally simulating a thing that you are familiar with, but doing it in a different way, which like is a little weird. Whereas something like this, it's like, oh, this is just so different that the difference might be easier.
Yeah, you definitely have to throw away previous philosophies and embrace the ones that this game puts forth.
Mm-hmm.
Is there some trouble with Primark? Maybe.
Looks
maybe.
like it's loading.
Yep.
Hey! It
Hello.
worked.
All right, there we go.
There we go. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
My computer appears to have randomly shut down. I suspect it was overheating, and so I'm going to figure that out because that's new.
That's
Yeah.
not the best.
That's what I was worried about.
So it's probably just the processor with the new fan that I got for it. So let's just,
Right.
anyways. I was hearing you guys over my phone while I was disconnected.
Oh, good.
Did you guys get what I was saying before in terms of I would not recommend this game for people who can get frustrated when it comes to arguing and debating and don't like that?
Yeah, I was hoping you could
Mhm.
define the type of argument a little bit more.
Okay. Because the thing when it comes to this is a game about negotiating, this is also in many ways a game about compromise. If you get too attached or too emotional or just get frustrated and unhappy with compromise, this is not a game that will make you happy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's a fair assessment. Yeah.
I would have thought like the project system would make those people happy.
In a way, it can, but
Well, it's going to
most of
boil
the
down
game
to
is up to negotiation. Like you finish a project and then you want to unleash a miracle and you want to do it one way, and the GM is like no, and you're going to get into an argument. Like,
I think it boils down more to the overall group than it does any individual person. Like, if you have a mix of people that are in this game for, you've got your D&D player, you've got your story game player, I don't think they're going to mesh well once they come to that negotiation point, because you're going to be coming from two different philosophies of gaming, and you're going to be working at cross purposes and not be able to compromise in the first place.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I could just tie them to the table and it work out.
I have a hot poker and you will settle this.
One of you walks out.
Totally. Lock all the doors. No access to bathrooms.
It's the Thunderdome of games. 2 players enter, 1 player leaves.
They reach for the dice. I'm like, no, you have to talk about this.
Exactly. That's the thing about a diceless game. You don't have a mediator thing. You are the mediator.
Right.
How important is it to you to end this argument?
For sure. Well, and like this is interesting because Zen, you were talking about how like this is kind of a game for writers, and like not literal writers, but people who enjoy creating word-based narratives.
Yeah.
And there's like a thing that Neil Gaiman said, which is really I really enjoyed. He was talking about he was collaborating with a different author. I think maybe the guy who wrote the Bulgariad. And he was talking about how like one of the things that they agreed would be true when they were collaborating is that like whoever cares the most about a thing wins, right? Like if they have different views of which way the narrative should go, they just figure out which one of them cares more, and then whoever cares, like if not getting your way would ruin your day, then you win, you get your way. And like in a lot of ways, the mechanics of the game are basically built to do that. Because if you care more, spend 8 points. Word of command it. You're done. Right?
Yeah, and that's I think how good negotiation works. Like with general like romantic relationship advice, one method that I've come across is like you rate if you two disagree on a thing, rate if you care about it. And so
Right,
whoever,
totally.
for the most part, whoever rates the highest one gets their way. Because if someone it's like I kind of want to do this, but it's if 5 is I don't care, I'm at a 6. Like I kind of want to do it, and then the person
Right.
doesn't want to do it. Is like, yeah, I'm at a 2 or a 1. I really don't want to do it.
Right. That whole system, but you can only assign the
what I
values of 1, 2, 4, or 8.
Yes.
Right.
Which is better because otherwise you're going to be penny anteing
Right. Totally.
the other player, and
Yeah. You shouldn't always. Actually, the flurry rules are one of the most criticized parts of the system.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it used to be that you couldn't revise your actions.
That means that whoever would say what
Right.
they do second would usually have the advantage.
Yeah. But I believe that's how it used to be.
Interesting. Okay.
Anyway,
Is that it?
I guess that's it.
I think that's it.
So my ulterior purposes to running this game was to, like, I just felt like we needed to have a diceless game with very flexible rules, like in our discussion of RPGs. Because just like some of the conversations we had about Burning Wheel and Torchbearer and Apocalypse World, I was just sitting there and going, we don't need dice or
They're not wrong. Many role-playing game systems are all about the dice. And everything else stems from the way the dice are rolled and what it means.
Yeah, let's expand the vocabulary a little bit.
Yeah.
I get it. It's a language game.
See
Yeah.
what you did there.
Well, yeah, and Adam's talked to, like in office hours, he's talked about like that question about like what dice does this game use, or like what is the resolution mechanic? It's like the least interesting question you can ask.
Yeah.
But I think for Nobilis, it's actually a really interesting question.
Because it's the same thing as the core of the game.
Right. Right.
Everything in the game is about communication, basically, in different ways. And
it's kind of strange. Your average dice game is more about the randomization of the roll, and Nobilis, the random element is actually the player.
Right. Right. Totally.
But like, it doesn't depend on the dice. It depends on the player and the group of people that you're with. It will change how the game runs and goes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it.
Yeah. So like,
like everything else is consistent.
For sure. Like if you ask somebody, hey, like what dice does Nobilis use? And your answer is none. Like that's an interesting answer.
No, I think the answer is you.
You are
right. Totally.
But it's kind of like you were talking about, like this role-playing game being like a book. It's like reading it's like looking at art or reading a piece of like deep literature and having every single person have different interpretations of what it means and different analyses of it. Yeah, it is the same either way.
Yeah, that's Nobilis. It's a lot of fun.
Thanks so much. That was awesome.
Should try it sometime.
That was amazing. So next week, right?
Next week?
No, I think we're off. I think next week we're off.
It's Halloween we're doing the thing.
I'm off.
It's not Halloween, but like the
29th.
29th, yeah.
The 22nd,
one shot.
I can't do it. The 29th, I can.
Okay. This is a Burning Wheel one shot, if I'm not.
Yes, the 29th we'll be getting together for a Burning Wheel one shot, maybe a 2-shot because it's kind of built for Duel of Wits to happen, and that might go long. But
is this a pre-built one or one you're doing?
Yeah, it's called Words Remain Below. It's available on the Burning Wheel web store. It's free. If anybody wants to check it out. And it centers around the PCs being at an inn where during a blizzard. when suddenly an inquisitor shows up with an accused witch in tow. A bunch of the players will have ties to whether or not they want this witch to survive or
Okay.
be exonerated. And the interesting thing about the adventure for me is that even though it's pre-written, nothing in the adventure actually tells you whether or not she's actually a witch.
Okay,
So
that's awesome.
it could be an innocent girl that's being accused. It could be she's actually, the devil's bride. And
what is it? Sorry, I thought you were done. Continue. I'll talk after.
No, it's just that I don't think I'm going to make that decision. I think play is going to make that decision for us.
Mm-hmm.
I was joking before. I just want to play the witch, man.
Yeah, like if like someone's trying to free the witch, and if they roll well, then they do it, and she wasn't a witch. If they roll badly, they free her, and she was a witch. Or something like that.
Yeah, but the main conflict in the whole thing is someone is going to die at the end, and the witch is going to be there along with a bunch of locals who are superstitious and hate witches.
I see.
With the PCs squarely in the middle.
So what
And
you're
they're all
saying is we
different,
need
right?
a sacrificial lamb.
If that's how you want to handle it.
I would like, as someone whose nickname is the Mage, can I play the most pro witch person?
Yeah, there are a bunch of pre-made things. There are a couple of pro witch type people. There's a scholar who's trying to prove to academia that witches are a thing. There's the mercenary tasked with keeping the witch safe until they bring her wherever she needs to be.
Very cool.
Gotta
There's the
extract her witch
bastard.
essence.
There's the bastard, who is the bastard son of the noble of the area, who is betrothed to the witch's sister.
Okay.
There's
Very cool.
the innkeeper whose spouse is sick with a plague and who has exhausted all options, so maybe get the witch to help her, who knows, or him. It's the spouse. So
Very cool.
yeah, there's a lot of different ways to approach, so it should be an interesting.
Do they have a bunch of
I
cool
look forward to
Weisses?
What's that?
They have a bunch of cool Weisses?
Please tell me.
Some of them have some interesting wises. Let me actually get the.
I don't know if I can see the character sheets before I think I just saw their names.
I was saying while you guys look this up that my favorite pre-made adventures that I've ever written were ones where they don't tell you what's going to happen. They just give you a starting situation and say, go. They give you preparation for the future stuff. Like, oh, here it's an adventure called Dungeon World: The Ghostwood Haunts, written by it's a publisher that doesn't do Dungeon World specifically, but it's done a bunch of Dungeon World supplementary stuff that was really good. All their adventures are excellent. It's like 200 pages, all of like our
I can't see
detailed but not too detailed information of just here is the village, here is what's going on, here are some fronts and stuff. There are many blanks that you can fill in. It draws a map and leaves blanks, including for the GM and the players. It's really good.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like adventures like that. That was the first time I ever read and or played a pre-made adventure that I actually liked, because I'm used to them from Pathfinder or D&D that are like, and then the players go to here, and then the players go to here, and then the NPC says
totally
this thing
linear. Don't deviate from this railroad or everything's going to go to hell. Yeah.
Ooh, this one has
Why
family
am I
secrets
playing a
wise.
game?
That's what I'm playing.
What's that?
This one has family secrets wise.
Ah.
Oh,
He's
that
a
is a good
bastard.
one.
Yeah, I think that's
Okay.
what I'm going to pick.
We're on a complete tangent now.
Yes. So, Nobilis, fun game, and no longer in print, but you can get it from Drive-Thru RPG for the low price of, I think it's $20.
I think so.
That's pretty cheap.
And it's super fun. It's good. Everyone should play it. I did, and it was fun.
I did, and it was fun.
You can play it too.
Yes, try
I will
Nobilis
also
now.
jump on the bandwagon and say it is fun.
It is.
Cool.
Um,
Two thumbs up.
And then 2 weeks from now, Burning Wheel one shot.
All right.
Same time.
All right.
Cool.
Catch
All right,
everyone
thanks,
later.
guys.
Good night.